If you've ever wondered how personal accountability and initiative could still manage to fit into a deterministic view of the universe, you've come to the right podcast. There's a will, but it's not free. There are degrees of relative freedom from external forces, degrees of relative freedom from historical forces, but no absolute freedom from any of it. You're built on a genetic plan, but different genes turn on or off in different contexts, allowing us to adapt to the environment, so there's quite a bit of wiggle room in phenotypic expression. This means the environment plays a big role in shaping our development as well, but it's not like the environment is always active and the organism is always passive. The direction and force of the wind has full control of a plastic bag. Not so for the sparrow. An organism, as it matures, is increasingly selective in the types of interaction it will participate in. Reactivity is delayed or transformed according to the active complexity within it. That a living thing has the capacity to act on itself increases the computational power necessary to predict its behavior. Everything is completely determined, but not all of a thing's determinants are outside of it. The sign by which we consider something animate versus inanimate is its degree of internally generated determination. When you poke a rock, its subsequent movement is much simpler to predict than when you poke a kangaroo. That's not jelly between your ears. It's just as busy as the environment. Rob Schneider's brain may be built according to plans inherited from his parents, using materials those plans chance to encounter, but the present sum result is enough of a nexus of determination for things yet to come that we feel compelled to put a name on it. If I want to predict Rob's next words, I'm not going to bother looking at his DNA, let alone his mother's. The chain of causality, though irrefutable, is way too long to be useful. It's far more pragmatic to ascribe agency to the phenotype. We can define agency as the degree to which an entity's behavior is governed by self-regulating mechanisms, of which consciousness is one, but not the only one. Plenty of self-regulation takes place at an unconscious level, and plenty of self-awareness fails to have an impact on behavior. The sum of self-directing mechanisms, including those flying below the radar of consciousness, are what we call the will of a thing, and the effectiveness in directing behavior relative to the effectiveness of the commands of external forces is its level of agency. Now let's separate out choice as another distinct idea. If you stick a turkey leg in a dog's face, he probably doesn't get a choice. But he does have will. Hunger's in charge, so his will is to eat. If you previously beat him for eating turkey, you've complicated him, and fear and hunger have to fight it out. If you wave it in front of a human, there's likely a full arena of combatants conducting deliberation, with hunger, dignity, distrust, politeness, and countless other voices joining in before a move is made. And many of the losing parties might even keep campaigning afterwards in protest. That play of conflict between motives is the essence of choice. Perhaps this is a good place to explain that consciousness is not an entity, but an epiphenomenon of biofeedback. The dog is not a separate third-party chooser, passing judgment over the motives. He is composed of those drives for hunger and fear, and it is their battle of chemical envoys which his faculty for self-perception experiences as thoughts, and their sum result is the dog's will. To say hunger conquered fear is no different from saying the dog hesitated but ultimately chose to eat. Dog is shorthand for fear and hunger and muscles and nerves and teeth and fur, and chose is shorthand for the process in the brain that caused the eating. That we can explain something doesn't make it any less real. Showing every link in the causal chain of neurochemistry behind the choice doesn't make it go away any more than knowing a dog's cellular composition makes the dog go away. The real dog made a real choice, but there was no real freedom involved. The deterministic equation changes again when we inject prediction. If I could show you, based on everything up to the present moment, your most statistically probable death, its probability would thereafter shrink, and upon second calculation, I'd likely get a different result. The future is only going to happen one way, but that way is still in the process of being determined, and our conception of that process and consequent behavior is part of that determination, including the stuff we're drastically wrong about. If I believe a baby python is poisonous, I'll fear being bitten by it, which will have a causal impact on my behavior. If you inform me it's not poisonous, or better yet, prove it's not by getting it to bite you in front of me, I'll change my belief about it and thus change my behavior around it. Similarly, beliefs in things like fate or free will, even when untrue, are still part of the equation. Let's say you're a heavy sleeper and your family has a sadistic sense of humor. As a prank, they take you to the hospital, put you in a wheelchair, and have a doctor wake you up and say, "Mr. Podcast listener, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but you were in a terrible accident. You've been in a coma all week and your legs no longer work." If you accepted this wholeheartedly, you might not try to stand. If you truly believe that you don't have a choice, why make any effort? It's only by a contrary belief in self-control that you could take the initiative to stand. Like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. The idea that you're in control increases self-determination insofar as it causes you to give less weight to the other factors. The more we undermine that idea, as science more accurately unravels the mysteries of the brain, the more passive some of us are apt to become, and the easier it'll be for governments and corporations to take control of those softer individuals, those who are eager for any excuse to shuck the burdens of initiative and accountability, let life happen to them, and become obedient little cogs, incapable of invention. The rest of us will just have to remember that explanation isn't annihilation, that quite the contrary, the expansion of fields like psychology and neurophysiology prove that something interesting is happening between our ears, something that matters in the course of history. We'll have to remember that the interpretation matters just as much as the data, and that the interpretations absolving us of responsibility are the same ones that render us powerless to act. I hope you enjoyed version 2 of this episode. Please feel free to chime in with any rebuttal. Hey guys, quick note before I go. I know some of these podcast topics are a little goofy, so if you like the way I think, but you really want to take advantage of the best of what my brain has to offer, look up my books on Amazon or Audible. My first book, Augmenting Willpower, is a field manual for human psychology that emphasizes personal accountability, while my second book, An Idea is Not a Product, is a guide for building routines and systems that force you to put your money where your mouth is. Both titles are available in all formats, so you can listen to the audio on the go, easily search topics by keyword in the ebook, and the paperback fits right in your pocket.